Misuse your powers for evil.
Your evil is mine.
Hello, and welcome to Next Stop Everywhere, a Doctor Who podcast, and we are here to talk about Not in the Still of the Night, in the Forest of the Night. I'm Jesse Jackson, and alongside me is...
Charles Skaggs.
And it is always a joy to talk Doctor Who, and tonight we're going to talk about a little different episode.
Yes.
Not as much buzz about this one out in the social media world. And I have feedback that I'm going to read that gave this very little praise. Charles, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that this was a very disappointing episode, especially after these past two episodes, Mummy and the Orient Express and Flatline, which were superb. It's a major come down, in my opinion, and bringing in the guy who wrote this episode, Frank Cottrell Boyce, is a children's author, and it seems to me that he may be a great children's author, but I really don't think he's suited to Doctor Who at all. I think it was an experiment, and Moffat wanted to do something a little different, and unfortunately, I don't think it worked.
What I did not look him up in IMDb. What has he done, Charles? Would we know his work?
I don't know,
somewhere?
but I looked him up on Wikipedia, and I noticed that he's written like some sequels to Chitty Chitty Bang Bang in England.
Okay.
So that's kind of where he comes from. That kind of that kind of storytelling. So which works because in the sense that this episode here was very heavily influenced by fairy tales, which, as we know, Stephen Moffat has an obsession about, and sees Doctor Who as a modern fairy tale. So in that sense, yeah, it makes sense to go to him and get him for this type of story. But again, I don't think this type of story works, or at least not right now.
So according to IMDb, the memo, his little bio, Frank Cottrell Boyce is one of the most respected screenwriters working in the English film industry. He has not. It's done Framed, God on Trial, Grow Your Own, Code 46. Hillary and Jackie was the first one I recognized. Welcome to Sarajevo. Can't talk.
Sarajevo.
Yeah. Captain Star. Do not know that. I assume.
I don't either.
So it was not something that struck out to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought this episode was okay, but certainly I would agree with you, a letdown compared to what we've been seeing.
Yes.
I thought it started off well with the little girl running in the forest.
Right.
And finding the doctor. And a great line, do you have an appointment? You need to have an appointment to see your doctor. To see a doctor. And I thought it was a clever bit that the doctor kept thinking the TARDIS was malfunctioning because it won't go anywhere. You've reached your appointment. No, I haven't.
There was a problem with the TARDIS destination.
Yes.
And it turns out, no, there's no problem at all. It's just not what you think it is.
Yeah. Any thoughts on the opening?
Yeah. The little girl, Mib Arden, she's dressed like Red Riding Hood, basically. Like a modern Red Riding Hood. She's got a red jacket on with a hood. So that reference is pretty obvious. And there's like all kinds of like little tidbits throughout that maybe we can talk about later. But I noticed that one thing I noticed about that the title of the episode is actually in a reference to The Tiger by William Blake. It's a poem, very famous poem, and where it says "Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night." So I'm sure that's where Frank Control Boyce got that from. But there was just, it seemed to me like there was all these influences to fairy tales, and I kept wondering, like, is this Doctor Who I'm watching or Once Upon a Time?
It had a fairy tale feel, but not necessarily one in a good way. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So wave to Linda.
Oh, hey, sorry, man. Dude, I'm sorry.
For those who don't know, that's Jesse's wife, Linda, crashing our podcast.
Yes.
She's podcast bombing.
Yes, she is. Yeah, I see what she's looking. I agree with you that she looks a little like Red Riding Hood, and and the whole theme that there's this overgrown forest and what's going on. I think could have been a good episode. But I agree with you. I've got some problems with it. I also don't like the way Clara was written in this episode at all.
Yeah, she's kind of all over the place in this episode.
Yes. And I find it one of the things, and I'm kind of jumping ahead, but one of the things that's been consistent is what a good teacher she is. And I just do not see Clara worrying about Danny's thoughts and Danny finding out secrets when the kids were in danger. Right. I just don't think, they tried to play that off as jokes a little bit, saying, oh, okay, yeah, yes, of course that's the number one thing. But she kept rethinking and like being reminded that I have to, really, you called the doctor first, you did all this. I didn't like that writing, and I did not think that she was it was not Clara-like to me. How about you?
Yeah, I totally agree. To have Clara being so wrapped up in, like, making sure she's keeping her lies to various people straight, especially to Danny, and that being a priority to her over the kids. Yeah, it seemed very uncharacteristic. Now, I don't know if that was intentional, to set something up down the road, but to me, it just seemed like just a very inconsistent depiction of the character, and that I kind of wonder, why Stephen Moffat, presuming he is acting as story editor, isn't going to that and going, no, I don't think Clara quite would do that.
Yeah,
he should be making this more consistent, because I don't know, maybe he didn't want to he didn't want to piss off the the writer, Frank Control Boyce, or he's just trying to keep him happy, or he just wasn't really paying that close enough attention to the script as he should have been. And speaking as a writer, it just frustrated me to have that inconsistency where Clara is concerned.
It feels like this episode needed a solid rewrite. The premise that they were staying overnight at a museum, that they tried to say the kids were the gifted, even though they weren't. I thought that was an odd thing too. That we just tell them that to make them feel important. Why would you do that? I think it would have been a better premise if they really were, an exceptional class.
Yeah. Like, maybe these are just like underachieving kids, and maybe they tell them that to kind of motivate them or make them feel better about themselves. Maybe they're insecure, or I know that with Courtney, she was kind of a problem child. So, it's not explained very well about why they're teaching these kids, and it seems like, almost seems like there's different age groups here. Going,
yes.
Like Courtney's class seemed older than this class. So I'm not really sure who's teaching what, and what grade level and all that is going on.
And if this had been like the math and science club,
Yeah.
that could have been a good excuse. There was an episode of West Wing, obviously years ago, where they had a future leaders of America class or something went to the Bartlett's White House, and there was a lockdown, and they were telling stories to the kids, and they made a point that one of the guys in the class, Josh Lyman and them could figure out that he's the smartest kid in a room full of smart kids, and that they could spot him already in the trends, and they knew what that meant and the challenges of that. I think it would have been interesting to have this is the gifted and talented, and with the doctor thinking of, I know what's that like, and I know that can be interesting when you are one of the smartest people in the room, because the doctor normally is. So I think that's a storyline they didn't miss. They missed that I think could have been better.
Yeah, you just kind of reminded me of that Star Trek Next Generation episode, Disaster, where Picard, is, like being the older, grumpier person that doesn't really get along with kids, has to take care of a bunch of kids.
Yes.
Yeah, so in that sense, it's almost like Capaldi's doctor, having to deal with all these kids that he really doesn't want to deal with. He even makes the point of saying like, I'm a Time Lord, not a childminder.
Yes, which was a funny line. He doesn't like Lemez. I said maybe he dreamed a dream. We did get a payoff though on the big red ring. I thought that was interesting. That Chekhov's tree ring versus Chekhov's gun. And I did think it was funny when Clara is all happy to call the doctor to tell him about this amazing thing, and he just really ruins her surprise. He's like, "Oh, you mean the trees in London? Was that the amazing thing you're going to show me?"
Yeah, I'm on it.
Yeah,
no big deal.
Yes. Interesting having the kids discuss, Miss Clara and Mr. Pink, and how the debating on are they in love? Of course they're in love. They shout at each other. That's what people do in love.
And you notice I like the bit where the kids are completely unimpressed that the TARDIS is bigger on the inside.
That was a wonderful thing.
Yeah. And the doctor's like, really? You're not impressed by this? Really?
Yeah.
Everybody else is.
Because they've shown that consistent that the doctor love when they say, because he's usually behind them going, it's bigger on, and he's all
again
proud.
Yeah, he's all like, oh, they're saying it again.
Yes. And they just like, we're not impressed at all. And I thought their reason was pretty good. There wasn't a forest, then there was a forest. Nothing surprises us anymore.
Well, it's a total kid thing, because kids, they're just, the stuff you want them to be impressed by, they're not impressed by. They will decide what they're going to be impressed by.
There is that commercial for, I think it's a Subaru, where the kid says, I thought it'd be taller, and they keep going to all these different places, and I thought it'd be, meh. So, yes.
Meh. Yeah.
The sonic screwdriver as a GPS locator was pretty cool.
One of the many, many, many functions it serves.
Yes.
When plot, it's required by the plot.
Absolutely, and I always love that. We've already talked about it, but it was really, I'm going to stress it again, Clara worrying about Danny finding out she's been seeing the doctor, and the whole, she's doing testing grades in the TARDIS, which seemed a little weird anyway, that you'd bring your homework onto the TARDIS like you're traveling.
Well, he had it. Maybe they had it with them to make notes
Yes.
about the museum
Uh-huh.
they were in, but
Hmm.
yeah, it just seemed
Hmm.
bizarre.
Yeah. Um, we did get a wolves. Talk about your Little Red Riding Hood, and he even
Right.
makes that joke, right?
Yeah.
Wolves are not impossible. Stick to the path, Little Red Riding Hood. So, and the tiger was a nice thing, but that was just not a lot of depth to it.
Yeah. And and of course Meb was like leaving objects through the forest like breadcrumbs,
Yes.
like Hansel and Gretel.
Hmm.
So there's also that fairy tale. And so yeah, this they kind of like just if you didn't pick up on the subtlety of it, they just
Hmm.
smashed you over the head with it.
And the trees were talking, which we had the talking trees in the Christmas special a few years ago.
Hmm.
The planet of Christmas trees.
Yes,
So it made me think a little bit of that.
which also disappointed.
Yeah, I liked it more than you did, but yes. Um, I was, and then we find out that the trees are here to help us. That that the reason the forest came is because we're going to have a sun flare, and we got the whole kind of weird storyline about Clara doesn't want to be saved. Danny doesn't want to be saved. The TARDIS
Hmm.
is just going to go off because the human race is saving you this time. Um, Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, this whole notion of the solar flare attacking or hitting Earth just out of nowhere. And I'm trying to figure out. I mean, once again, we have like really bad science on Doctor Who, where you supposedly have like the trees just spurting out, to gigantic proportions overnight in the attempt that they're going to like somehow prevent the solar flare by releasing a ton of oxygen into the atmosphere. And supposedly this will stop the solar flare, but I'm trying to just work in my head. Okay, well, fire needs oxygen to thrive. So I'm thinking like these trees just putting out oxygen to the atmosphere is just going to make everything burn even more.
Yes.
How is it going to save the planet Earth with a ton of extra oxygen?
And even worse, um, if we're going to try to say it's not magic, it's
Yeah.
science, how does the tree grow overnight? They didn't really explain that.
No.
Um, they're everywhere. The flare hits
Hmm.
and the trees disappear. We don't
Yeah.
really know why, or at least I did not pick up if they explained why. It isn't like you saw a bunch of ash everywhere because the tree took the
Right.
flame and carried it.
They just magically disappeared.
Yes. Um, and then and this may have been the purpose of this was to have Danny and Clara have a conversation.
Right.
And it, you, because we've already played this dance. They had the monster at the school, and that's how Danny found out about the doctor. So now then, we've got the same dance. The kids were in danger. He shows his courage and worries about the children first. All the kids want to go back to their mom and dad instead of riding in the magic
Yeah.
spaceship. And they have the discussion where, I just want, I just want honesty from you, Clara. That's what I'm all ever asking. And I'm not sure either why she doesn't believe that or is that all he wants.
Yeah. I mean, if you notice this time, once he actually figured out that Clara's lying to him, he was much more cool with it than he was in the caretaker when he was all pissed off about it.
Hmm.
And there's no consistency there with Danny either. That
Right.
he was basically in the caretaker. He's like giving her an ultimatum, going, "Look, you lie to me again, you're out of here." Um, so he finds out that she's lying to him, but he's like, "Oh, no big deal, it's good." You want to go off and check out all these wonders, but I've got, there's so many wonderful things here on Earth. I have no interest in traveling in time and space. And so you should stay here with me.
Yeah,
It just kind of blows my mind.
he made a good argument that there is a wonder in getting to know one person and growing old with someone, and the idea of, together we can find each other and have our own adventures. Just a little bit odd.
Yeah, I mean, I think there would. I mean, you would think there would be a plan here that, okay, whenever they write Clara out of the series, that she'll just go off with Danny and they'll live their lives wherever,
Right.
and maybe they'll both keep teaching at Coal Hill School, and that'll be it. But I mean, yeah, obviously there could be some. It's Doctor Who. There could be some curveballs, and there probably will be. But it just, it just seems like that's what they want to do. We kind of know this. I'm not sure why we have to keep going over this material
With
instead of moving things forward.
With the modern era, Martha is the only companion that just walked away, correct?
Yeah, pretty
'Cause
much.
Rose went to the alternate dimension.
Yeah, she was trapped.
Yeah.
And then Donna
Had the whole
had her memories wiped out,
right.
Or blocked so that, she wouldn't release all this energy that would kill her.
Right.
But and then, Amy left with Rory.
Right.
She, to be with him more than just leaving the doctor. She didn't.
Right.
She left to be with him because she allowed the Weeping Angel to touch
Yes.
her. So
Now in the classic, I know enough that this happened fairly often, that they would change companions, and the companions would just, I've had my fun, I've done my tour, I've had my fun, now then it's time for me to start the rest of my life.
Right. Yeah, you had, like, in the example of Joe Grant, who was the third Doctor's companion that also appeared on an episode of the Sarah Jane Adventures. That she traveled with the Doctor, and she had kind of a crush on him, but she ended up going. She found this, like, environmentalist that she fell in love with, and basically stayed with him, left the Doctor, stayed with him, got married, had kids, and traveled all over the planet Earth doing, like, to the Amazon and whatnot. So, yeah, it's not unheard of. And so I think that's why I'm thinking that's what they want to do with Clara. But, the question is, will there be any, twist, or will just Stephen Moffat decide, okay, I want to rip your hearts out. I want you to get attached to Danny, and then I'm going to, like, kill him off or something, or kill Clara off, and you'll be all distraught. And I don't know.
So we have not been very complimentary about the episode, which is, I think, kind of funny, considering just a couple weeks ago, someone had said, "Hey, you guys grade pretty, pretty liberally." I thought the kids were funny. I thought a lot of the quips they said were funny, and the banter back and forth. The one kid wearing a Yankees cap, of course, is always horrible because the Yankees suck. But
speaking as an Indians fan, I agree.
Yes, and as a Texas Rangers fan. But it just, they had some nice lines, they were funny, there were some nice points back and forth, but there was no true monster. There wasn't wolves and a tiger is, I guess it's a threat, but it's not very big.
Much one. Yeah, not much one. Not a Doctor Who threat.
Right. So
yeah. Once again, you've got the Doctor he steps back and does nothing, and that supposedly resolves everything, just like in Kill the Moon.
Yes.
And that was a disappointing ending to the episode. And then to have another one just like it is very frustrating to me.
Absolutely. Is there any?
No, I'm not. I don't want to beat the episode up, because there were some great lines, like the whole "I am Dr. Idiot" and stuff like that,
funny.
and then Class Project Save the Earth is, and So, which I kind of wonder is it that pass fail, I guess, because you either save the Earth or you don't.
Yes.
But yeah, it's just it wasn't horrible in the sense like it's definitely not as bad as say Love and Monsters in my eyes or Fear Her,
Hmm.
which I think were two of like the worst Doctor Who. I know a lot of people online were saying, oh, this is like Fear Her Part 2, or just completely ragging on the episode. I don't think it was completely horrible, but by the same token, I don't think it was great either.
Anything else we need to cover before I have some feedback on the episode, and then I want to
Yeah.
get to our lines and scores, and then of course, very interested in your reverse of polarity. This one.
Yeah, this was a tricky one. I'll give you that. Then let's see. I couldn't notice a couple things that like Meb having her friends that seemed to me a lot like the Ninth Doctor's nanogenes from the Doctor dances.
Yes.
These kind of like firefly things that just kind of buzzed around and did magic things. And then there's that whole thing at the end with Missy.
Yes.
She's back. And, once again, like tacked on at the end going, see, I'm still here, I'm still in the background in the shadows doing stuff. And this time she's watching the solar flare.
Right.
On the screen. So I'm wondering, okay, was she responsible for the solar flare? And was she responsible with the solar flare that was back in Time Heist that struck the Bank of Calabraxos?
Okay.
So, did she cause that or those solar flares? If so, why?
Yeah.
Is she just messing with the Doctor, or because it's it seemed odd that he'd have to deal with this twice in a season. Again, I don't know if that's just deliberate or just inconsistent storytelling, but and then she seems surprised that the Doctor just let it happen, let it take place, as opposed to actively trying to prevent the solar flare or stop it somehow.
Yeah, I agree. Couple things I had to cover. I really liked the "Is that how you think spring begins?" on a group message on Tree Facebook. And then I did like what use is clever against trees? They don't listen to reason. You can't plead with them. You can't lie to them. Good point. Lying again. No moving points, no circuit. And this almost made my line of the episode, but I picked another one. But I don't know which student said it, but I love the idea. And let's find X, and she goes, "It's not lost. It's right there on top."
It's there at the top. Yeah.
I thought that was a pretty great line.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yes.
So.
Okay. I will start with. Well, let me read our feedback, and then we'll go through that.
Okay, sounds.
So I have poor Ken Schaefer. Has since we gave him the shout out a couple episodes, he actually sent me today. Don't know if you'll get this before the podcast, but in case you do, here's my input. Howdy, Jessies and Charles.
Howdy.
Howdy. I've been a Doctor Who fan since 1977. When I saw my first episode of a serial of Tom Baker, I've watched the Doctor rise and fall and rise again. From the greatness of Tom Baker to the terrible writing for poor Sylvester McCoy. From the resurrection with Eccleston to the greatest of David Tennant. But in the forest of the night feels like an episode written by Jane and Pip Baker. Any Doctor Who fan can deal with a little hand-waving. But this episode was not just poor, it was silly. The only good bit didn't have anything to do with the story, but were interpersonal. And since I'm not as big a fan of the interpersonal as I am the adventure, that means it rates pretty low. In fact, the thing I liked best was the preview of the next episode, which starts apparently the explanation of Missy in heaven. Anywho, see what he did there?
Yeah, pun intended.
That's my 2 cents worth. Ken. So,
yeah.
Thank you, Ken. I already had my opinion before I read the email, but I agree. It was just not that strong of an episode.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on Ken's
Um,
email?
Well, for one, for those who don't know, Pip and Jane Baker, they basically they created the Ronnie, and who is actually a very good Doctor Who villain. And so, but the problem is they wrote one really good episode of the Ronnie for Colin Baker, the Mark of the Ronnie, where she debuts, and then they ended up writing Sylvester McCoy's first episode, Time in the Ranny, which was horrible. It was a horrible debut for Sylvester's Doctor, but
And Ken believes that
and I'm sure that's what Ken is
Ken
focusing
believes
on.
everything about that episode is bad. The
Yeah.
soundtrack, the theme
Yeah.
music, he just is not a fan of that at all.
See, I like the theme,
Mhm.
but it took a while to grow on me. But I really like Sylvester's theme,
Okay.
the Seventh Doctor's theme. But yeah, I don't, I think Time in the Ranny is actually, I don't want to say it's better than this episode, but it's not much worse.
Well, and I know they wrote some of the Trial of a Time Lord.
Yes.
So I guess
Yeah.
they wrote several episodes.
Yeah, they did. There was Robert Holmes, the script editor, fell ill and died, and so so they basically came in and kind of scrambled and helped salvage that season.
Right.
I think they wrote the third part of the time of the Trial of the Time Lord season, which was called Terror of the Vervoids,
Yes.
and which also involved plants.
Yes.
Hey, but no, that's not the reverse of polarity.
Okay.
So be cool. So and it was a pretty okay episode. So they're two of those writers that they weren't the best of Doctor Who, especially because by the time Colin Baker's era and Sylvester's era, it was very hit or miss about whether you're going to get a good episode or not. There were good episodes back then. I disagree with Ken that Sylvester's era is completely horrible as in terms of writing, because you had the terrific Remembrance of the Daleks, and then you had Ghostlight and Battlefield and the Curse of Fenric, especially, which was another top-notch episode. So there are definitely good episodes in Sylvester's era, especially in his final season, that are definitely worth checking out and shouldn't be written off.
Okay. Thank you, Charles.
You're welcome.
I'll go first. I never can remember who goes first or whatever. So,
No, go ahead.
My line of the episode is fear a little bit less, trust a little bit more, which I think is good advice anytime.
That's an excellent line. Actually, you stole my line of the episode.
Okay.
So Jackson. I was shaking my fist.
Okay.
Jackson. It was the "Do you think that's how spring begins?" line. With a group message on Tree Facebook, because I just love the idea of Tree Facebook. Do you think that they send text to each other?
That was a very good line.
Yes. And also like the "I am Dr. Idiot."
Yes,
line.
that was wonderful.
The perfectly delivered by Peter Capaldi.
Yes. I'm going to give this 6 tigers in a teacup. Nice.
I give the episode 5 out of 10 annoying school children.
Ah, very nice as well. This
is definitely the low point of this season.
I agree. I think a couple of the lines from the kids and the back and forth, I gave it an extra point, just them not being impressed with the TARDIS. But I cannot totally disagree with your 5. So
everybody that kind of bagged on us for being too upbeat and high grading in our episodes, just in your face, people, because we just slammed this episode.
Of course, I'm sure other people are giving it 2s and 3s. So
I'm sure they are. So they're probably like, "You're still high."
Yeah. Charles, give us a Doctor Who cleanser. What do you recommend for someone that
Wash the taste of this bad episode out
Yes.
of your mouth. Yes, or out of your eye sockets and your ear sockets. We're gonna reverse the polarity to a much better episode, a much better story. The Seeds of Doom from 1976, which was season 13 of the original series. It's a fourth Doctor story with Tom Baker and Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith. So that alone makes it worth watching. But it was written by Robert Banks Stewart, and it starts off like it's almost kind of like the movie The Thing, where you've got this base in Antarctica, and you have a group of British scientists digging through the permafrost, and they pull out these strange pods. Okay.
Mhm.
And of course, being, this is Doctor Who, so they take them back to their like little base, and the pods come to life and sting somebody and turn them into like what's called a crinoid, which is like this plant creature. So see where I'm going with plants?
Yes.
And it's the crinoids are like this, they're a galactic weed, I guess, and they settle on planets and eat animal life. So basically it's plant life taking over for animal life and taking control. And over the course of the episode, the second pod gets after they deal with the first pod infecting somebody. Everybody goes. The whole story shifts back to England, of course, because it's Doctor Who, and the second pod is taken back to England, which of course infects somebody else, and then grows to like ginormous proportions, and threatens to germinate and spread its seeds all over England and create this, like plant domination
Okay.
over England and eventually the world. So if you liked Forest of the Night, and I'm sure you're very rare in that, I'm not saying there aren't people that like, because my wife Lori loved that episode because she thought it was adorable. So there are people that loved that, but if you didn't and you're looking for something to wash that out of your mouth and your eye sockets, check out The Seeds of Doom. It's a very excellent and creepy episode, as it should be for Doctor Who. And that's the kind of episode we should have gotten, in my opinion.
Very nice. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Pulled that one out of my butt.
No, I'm impressed. So we have 2 episodes left, correct?
Yes. The 2-part season finale, which over there is called series finale. So if you see series finale, don't panic. It's not the end of Doctor Who. It's just what they call it over there, as opposed to season finale over here.
They call it series. This is this is series 8.
Series 8,
which makes a lot of purists very happy. Very unhappy because they think it should be because it's a continuation. So
right.
But it is since the restart.
If you wanted to add the previous show or series, it would be season 34.
Right.
But
we're not that nitpicky, but we're close.
No, and it makes it easier for people to catch up to go back to series 1 as opposed to season 1 and burn through 33 seasons after that. Yeah.
There is a wonderful book. I'm going to go off topic just for a minute because this wasn't a very long episode, but Lisa Spellman, the Spellman Files by Lisa Lutz is a wonderful series. It is a detective novels about a family of private eyes and they're a very dysfunctional family. And in the second book, they meet a police detective, Henry, who is obsessed with Doctor Who. And
my kind of guy.
Yes, and he, though, is a purist, and he won't let Izzy and her younger sister watch the new series till they watch all the old ones. And so they would... Isabel and her little sister would sneak when he isn't there and would get the Eccleston and Tennant episodes to watch because
Right.
Henry wanted him to start from the very beginning. You know, he was this kind of, you can't really appreciate this
Yeah.
till you do that. So it's always
So
nice.
that's bad parenting, in my opinion.
Um,
Because let them watch the new series, because they're going to find that more appealing, and then go back.
Well, and they, so I actually was at a book signing with her, and she, this was before Smith had taken over, and she liked Eccleston better than she did Tennant. And we had a discussion about the Doctor at a book signing, which was kind of nice. And she said that Henry wouldn't like Torchwood, him being a police person. So we had a really fun discussion. So just to go forward,
Yeah, they tend to get killed on a pretty regular
Yes.
basis on Torchwood.
yes, I know that when I have failed as a father. Chris Jackson does not watch Doctor Who, except on Christmas
Blasphemer.
Day with me. He will always sit down on Christmas Day, and watch it at the end of the night with me. He has for the past couple of years. But the grandkids, whenever, and I'm not planning on Chris getting married anytime soon, but when he does, I'm raising those kids to be comic book reading, Doctor Who watching, and we will start with the modern era.
Well, maybe you can take pride that probably it skips a generation,
go.
so that once you do have the grandkids,
Yes.
yeah, you can bond with them, and that'll be your way to relate to them.
Absolutely. And who knows at what number Doctor will be on at that time. Well, we have rambled enough. We are very excited about the next 2 weeks. Should be very exciting.
Yeah, that trailer looked really interesting.
It did.
That whole business about whether, with Clara telling the Doctor that Clara never existed.
Yes. That's going to be very, very cool.
Dun dun dun.
Yes. So you can reach us at Next Stop SMG on Twitter, Next Stop Everywhere SMG at gmail.com. If you are dressing up in a Doctor Who themed costume for Halloween, please email us the photos or post them on our Next Stop Everywhere Facebook page.
That's a great idea.
I think that would be wonderful. I can be reached at JWJ170104. And Charles?
You can reach me at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, or you can find me on Facebook, or that strange little like Google Plus thing that the kids are all into because it's not Facebook, and I'm on Instagram. And you can find me at my blog, Damn Good Coffee and Hot, which recently passed the 500,000 page view threshold. So I'm very proud of that. Thanks to all of you who have checked out my blog and supported it and shared links. You guys are awesome. And thank you for helping the little blog that could. So, and I also want to give a special shout out to my sister-in-law, Lisa Brockhouse. Hi, Lisa.
Hey, Lisa.
Hey, Lisa. I want to thank you for telling everybody to go to our Facebook page and like the page to get us up to I think we're up to 87 now. So we've definitely boosted up a few notches. We still haven't hit 100 yet. So hopefully Lisa has more friends that she can twist their arm and make them like our page, because we need the help. But other than that, I just want to say thank you, and thanks to everybody that supports this podcast, because we cannot do it without you. And so yeah, rate us on iTunes and comment and just spread the word, because we can't do this without you.
Absolutely, we need your help. Go to iTunes, rate us, review us. Please
subscribe.
Yes.
And subscribe if you haven't already.
Please retweet the links to the new episodes. We are trying to get as many listeners as possible. Please continue to give us feedback. We thank you for those of us who did, especially you, Ken. And I think that's going to do it for us. Oh, Charles, don't you have a new podcast out?
Why, yes, Jesse, I do. Yeah, our good friend Karen Lindsay, who Jesse shares with on JKL Media Podcast and a number of other podcasts, Storming the Castle,
Yes.
I guess, and some others. So Karen and I have gotten together, and we are now doing a Constantine podcast called Dangerous Habits, the Constantine podcast, and we just recorded our first full episode after the pilot yesterday, and which is now available on iTunes as well. And it's also part of the Southgate Media Group.
Yes.
So, help support Southgate Media Group so that Rob Southgate and that they're all happy with us, because we want to keep growing and growing our power. So we're gradually taking over.
Absolutely. I have listened to the first episode where we introduced the host, and even though I knew you both, I had a blast listening to it. I'm looking forward to hear y'all's thoughts. We don't talk about this often, but if you go to Southgate Media's webpage, there is a whole range of podcasts that are our brothers and sisters on a lot of different topics, and they're all a lot of fun to listen to. I am trying to angle where I get someone to do the Newsroom podcast with me, because I am a longtime Aaron Sorkin fan. So more details on that soon. In the meantime, Charles, I think we're going to call it a night. I'm going to say keep hope alive.
All right.
And say I think it does us good to be reminded the universe isn't entirely peopled with nasty creatures out for themselves. Sometimes you get trees who want to help us, whatever that means. Keep
Very
listening,
nice.
And we will talk to you next week.
Take care,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
If you would like to donate to help pay for this and other Southgate Media Group podcasts, simply go to our website, southgatemediagroup.com, and click on the donate button. It can be as little as $1 or, well, as much as you want. Help keep this fun going by supporting this and our other shows. Thanks again for listening, everyone. You're the best fans in the world.